Hello and welcome to another Facebook Live. Here we are again on a Wednesday. I'm very happy to introduce Lynne, who's joining us. Hello, Lynne.
Hi, Craig. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine too.
Lynne has a lovely website, if you don't know, called Put It Like This. And what's on the website, Lynne?
Well, I'm an online teacher, so putitlikethis.com. If you go there, you can find out about all the kind of classes that I do and the services that I offer. And if anybody's interested, there's also a place there where you can contact me as well.
Okay. And my name's Craig. I'm from Mansion Inglés. Here we are. mansioningles.com, where you can find resources, free courses, and lots of stuff to help you improve your English and take it up to the next level. And also, we have a podcast over at inglespodcast.com. And that free podcast will also help you improve all aspects of your English. But today, we're talking about advice.
Yeah, giving advice and asking for advice.
So, do we need to say hello to people? Christine is on time this week. Hello, Christine. You're early. Good to see you. You set your alarm today.
That's rude. Hello, Christine. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Christine.
And Hema as well. Hello.
Christine's got a lovely sense of humour. She'll forgive me. And hello, Hema. Stefania is with us live. Mirta from Argentina. Coque again. Hi.
Hi.
Olivia, hello. Thanks for joining us. David. Paki, sorry. Sari is here. People coming in all the time. That's absolutely wonderful. Yeah. So the first thing when we're speaking about advice is a mistake that many students of English make, and that is that advice in English is an uncountable noun. It's countable in Spanish, un consejo, but in English it's uncountable. So we need to say a piece of advice or some advice. Can you give me some advice, or can you give me a piece of advice?
Or let me give you some advice, or let me give you a piece of advice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the verb is to advise, and there's a slight pronunciation difference. So with the noun advice, it's like an S sound just from the teeth. But the verb advise, there's vibration here in the throat, in the vocal cords. So if you put your hand here and you say the verb advise, you should be able to feel vibration. Advise. Also here, advise. So there's a slight difference in the pronunciation. Advise.
Advise.
Slight difference in the pronunciation. I advise you. Sorry.
And you can probably see from the banner, there's a difference in the spelling, because the noun is spelt with a C, advice, and the verb with advise is an S. And here's a little tip. Here's a piece of advice for all of you language learners, if you want to remember what is the right spelling, right? Well, I always tell my students, a noun begins with N, and verb begins with V, and N comes before V in the alphabet. So you figure out whether the noun or the verb, and the N comes before the V and the C comes before the S. And that's the same with some other words as well. For example, like
practice.
But practice doesn't change the pronunciation. Strangely.
No, just the spelling.
So we say practice and to practice. It just changes the spelling. But for advice and advise, we change the spelling and the pronunciation, just to keep me and Craig in a job. That's why English is so difficult, so that we can work.
Let's look at ways of asking for advice. Actually, before that, why don't you write some expressions, any expressions you know, in the chat, any ways you can think of asking for advice. Okay, if you want to ask someone for advice, what would you say in English? How would you begin to ask for advice? and write your ideas in the chat, and then we'll see if you can guess what we've got prepared for you.
I have a little theory, you know, it's a silly theory, but I've often wondered, because I speak German as well and Spanish, and in German and in Spanish, advice is countable. Like like we said at the beginning, you mustn't say an advice, because we don't say that. We say some advice. And I often wondered, why is it uncountable in English, and whether it's got something to do with our English stereotypical personalities, that we never just have one piece of advice, we have lots. Do you think that's the reason, Craig?
It could be. Yeah, I never thought about that before, but actually that's an interesting theory. It could be the reason, because we've got lots of advice, so it's uncountable. So much advice.
So much advice. We always want to tell other people how to do it better. And other people are very they just have one piece of advice, and we have lots and lots.
So Olivia's asking, so I need some advice. Is that correct? Yes.
Yeah, that's correct, Olivia. Well done. So I need some advice.
Very good.
Has anybody got any other ways of asking for advice?
That's one way to ask for advice. Yeah. I need some advice. Any other ideas? Oh, that's nice, Christine. Yeah, I'm at a loss to know what to do. I'm at a loss. To be at a loss means not to know something. So that's excellent.
Yeah. I'm at a loss to know what to do. That is good. Parkin is saying British. I don't know whether what he means with that. Whether he means it's the British who always want to give lots of advice. Maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay.
No other ideas
today. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll tell you then. We'll tell you ways of giving advice. What's your advice? What do you think? What's your advice? What do you suggest? What do you suggest I do, for example?
Hema's just written, what do you suggest? That's right. Well done, Hema.
Well done, Hema.
Yeah. What's your advice? What do you suggest?
Here's another
Any other ways? What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? Now, the pronunciation of that we should maybe comment on, because, if you try to pronounce that every word, what do you think I should do? It's very unnatural. And the do you, we push together and we say do. So what do you think? We're going to stress what, think, and do, right? So the words what, think, and do are very, very clear. What, think, do. And then the words in between, we're going to make them very, very short, and we're going to swallow them a little bit. So we say, do you think? Do you think? And then we say, I should. What do you think I should do? And you can hardly hear should, can you? Yep. So what do you think I should do? What do you think I should do?
What do you think I should do? A similar one with the same pronunciation features, not what do you advise me to do, but what do you advise me to do? So the to is very weak. It's muy débil. Not to, but to. And what would you advise me to do? What would you advise me to do? And you hear the words that have meaning, that have a message. So advise, do, and what. They're the strong stressed words. What would you advise me to do?
What would you advise me to do? Oh, I like this one. This is nice. So this is a conditional. If you were me, and again, listen to that pronunciation, because we don't say if you were me, which is a very nice, very strong pronunciation, but that's not the way we speak. We say were for were. So if you were me, what would you do? And again, the words we're stressing is you, me, do, right? If you were me, what would you do? Okay.
Christine's asking if you were in my shoes, in my skin. I don't think I would say my skin. Would you, Lynn? Would you say if you were in my skin?
Not really. No,
Not
I
very
don't think
common.
so. It's not very common. I mean, it is an expression. Put yourself in my shoes, or if you were in my skin, maybe how would you feel? But not really for asking for advice. It's more of a question. If you were in my skin, how would you feel? That's more like a question if you're discussing, I don't know, for example, maybe racial issues, or maybe if you're discussing the way you're feeling, but it's not really for advice.
But definitely in my shoes.
My
That's
shoes.
definitely common. Yeah. If you were in my
Right.
shoes, what would you do? What would you do? Definitely.
What would you do?
May's, I'm not sure exactly what you mean here, May. Could you please the right expression? The expressions we're showing on the screen, these are very good expressions for asking for advice. And if you can think of any more, then please tell us.
Okay.
Okay. Do you think I should go to the doctor? Says Thessar.
That's
Do you think
possible.
I should?
Do you think I should?
Do you think I should? Do you think I should? Okay, what's next? I need your advice on something. Again, here it's the noun advice with the C. So I need your advice on something. The your would be weak. So I need your advice on something. And because advice finishes with a consonant sound, s, and on the preposition begins with a vowel sound, it links together, it connects. So I need your advice on something. Advice on. I need your advice on something.
Him has got one.
Where?
What would you suggest I do? Him has, which is also correct. What would you suggest I do?
What would you suggest I do? So those are some expressions you can use to ask for advice. Let's look at some other expressions for giving advice. So again, if you can think of any, please write them in the chat and we'll help you. If they're not exactly correct, we'll help you to improve them. So write any expressions you can think of for giving advice to someone. And we're going to practice this at the end of the session.
And of course, some people give you advice or offer advice, even if you haven't asked them. So that happens quite a lot. So when you hear these expressions that we're about to say, then you can, even if you haven't asked for advice, maybe you can think, oh, somebody's giving me advice here. Okay.
That's called unsolicited advice. And we'll speak about that later too. How do you feel about unsolicited, when people tell you things to do something, but you haven't asked for their advice? Okay, so giving advice.
Right, so we'll start with the first ones, which are very common. So why don't you? Now, if somebody says, maybe you haven't asked for advice at all, but somebody comes along and says, why don't you? Then that is a signal that they are offering advice to you. Okay, it's not a question, it's a suggestion. So why don't you? Or if they say you should, then they are advising you quite strongly, I think, when you say you should do something. Or you'd better. Now that is you had better. It's quite a strange construction, but we do use it. And had better is an expression that means the same as you should. Right now, you should and you'd better, they are quite strong ways of giving advice. You're really telling people because you think you know better. And why don't you is a little bit more neutral. It's a bit more polite, possibly.
I think, and I don't know if you agree, Lynn, but I'd be interested to know what you think. But obviously, depending on the intonation as well. But isn't you'd better slightly stronger?
You'd better.
Then you should. It could be the same depending on the intonation. But if you had better, I feel is a bit stronger than you should. So it's you should, you had better, then you must.
Yes.
You must is obligation.
Yes, I would agree. Yes. So
Because
there's kind of like degrees.
If the doctor says, you should eat less chocolate, Craig. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
okay, yeah, I know I should. You had better eat less chocolate. I think that's stronger advice.
Yes, that's true. It's more of a more.
Depending on the intonation as well.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some more. It might be a good idea to. Now that's quite soft. That's quite soft advice, especially with the modal verb might. It makes it a bit softer. It might be a good idea to, again, use intonation to make your advice or your suggestion even more polite or softer. It might be a good idea to lose some weight, for example.
Oh, I hope you're not talking to me, Craig.
No, I'm talking to me. This is advice I'm giving myself.
All right, then. And then you can always say, you could always, and again, the pronunciation is not you could always, it's you could always. The stress comes on the always, yeah? You could always.
And your voice is going up there. Your intonation
yes,
is rising.
You could always try leaving the chocolate in the supermarket. If you want to lose some weight, you could always try not buying the chocolate.
I think you can guess what advice I'm going to ask Lynne for at the end of the session.
I wasn't prepared for that.
Hemma's suggesting, what would you suggest I do? Which is very good, perfectly correct. What would you suggest I do? Again, the intonation would start high and then go down. What would you suggest I do? Cesar, do you think I should go to the doctor? Perfect sentence. Very good, Cesar. Well done. Why don't you give me some advice about her behavior? Says Anna. Also correct. Very well expressed. And Christine, one thing you could do is, or I might as well. Yeah.
I'm not sure about I may or might as well. What do you think about that? I don't really think that's suggestions.
Not giving advice.
That's not giving advice. But one thing you could do is, that's definitely giving advice. Definitely. The first part, yes. The second part, I'm not sure. That's not really giving advice.
Maria Angelica, can we use shall for giving advice? I can't think of an example with shall.
No. That's more for a suggestion, Maria Angelica. So you can say, shall we go to the supermarket? It's more like an invitation, but not giving somebody strong advice. It's more of a suggestion when you say, shall we do this? Shall we do that? But you're not that it's not advice in the same sense. It's more suggestions.
Cesar's asking, how do you say automedicarse? Self-medication. The verb is to self-medicate. So why don't you visit the doctor before self-medicating? Would be the advice. Self-medication.
Okay. Shall we continue?
Yep. So have you thought about going to the doctor? Have you thought about stopping smoking? Remember, after that preposition about, if you use a verb, use a gerund, an ing. So have you thought about doing more exercise? Have you thought about making an appointment with a specialist? And as Lynne said before, with the conditional sentence for asking for advice, if you were me, you can change it a little and use the same construction to give advice. If I were you, I'd, which is I would, contracted, I'd. If I were you, I'd do more exercise. If I were you, I'd stop smoking, for example.
Okay, now some people are also commenting here. We've got Mirta who's saying, what about going to the cinema? And again, that's a little bit like the way the shall before as well. It's
a suggestion.
It's sort of like a suggestion more, okay? Unless somebody has asked you specifically, like if I say to you, Craig, I need to get out more. Have you got any advice? And then you might say, well, what about going to the cinema? That might make you feel happy. In that sense, it would be advice. But very often, what about or shall we? That's more suggestions rather than actually giving advice. Okay.
And so is Kike's idea. Shall I open the window? Making a suggestion. Yeah. So shall you'd use for making suggestions, offering something, rather than advice.
Okay.
If I were in your shoes, that was Christine's expression.
That's right. And then we have, if you take my advice, you'll do this. Now, that's also quite strong because that's a conditional. Yeah. If you take my advice, you will do this, right? So if you take my advice, you'll have a better time. Okay. It's almost like a little bit of a threat, I think, isn't it? It's very strong advice to say.
It's more immediate. It's also closer to the speaker. The tense is closer to the speaker. If I were you, going back to the past tense gives more distance, so it's softer. If I were you, if I were in your shoes, it's much softer advice.
But if you take my advice, I'm telling you, like that. Okay.
And Christine says it might be a good idea. Yes. Oh, with the thing before. Yeah. So you can say it might be a good idea to do this, or use the gerund because it's the subject of the clause. So exercising might be a good idea, or spending money might be a good idea if you're feeling stressed, for example. I think you'd better is stronger, Ezekiel. You had better is quite strong advice. Yes, that is quite strong advice. So those are some expressions for giving advice. Why don't you? You should, you'd better. It might be a good idea too. If I were in your shoes, you could always. If I were you, I would, or I'd. If you take my advice, you'll. Let's look at not giving advice.
But just before we do that, can I give a piece of advice? I'd like to give you all some advice. Now, at the moment, we're giving you many, many expressions, right? Because I think for advice, there are many, many ways of doing it. And it depends what level of learner you are in English. If you are a beginner, and if you find these are many, many expressions, don't worry about it. What you need to do is just pick one or two expressions that you can use now. So pick a soft expression and a more firm expression, for example, and then try to focus on you using it. The other expressions you just need to recognize. Now, if you're a learner who is a little bit more advanced, maybe up to now, you have been using the same expression all the time. And then if you want to get better at English, then it's a good idea if you can try to vary your English. So from all these different expressions, see if you can pick one or two new ones, and then you should try to use those in future so that you can vary your English a little bit more. All right. But if you're a lower level learner at the moment, don't get too stressed because, of course, these are many, many expressions, many ways to say the same thing. All right. The main thing is that you understand them. Right. So first of all, you understand them, but to productively use them, you have to take it step by step. That's my advice. What do you think of that advice, Craig?
I think that's excellent advice. And I will add something more to Lynne's wonderful advice. And that's when you get to level B2 and above, then you should be varying your vocabulary, which means having at least 2 or 3 different ways of giving advice and asking for advice. So that if you are doing an exam, for example, and you need to write giving advice or asking for advice, or in the speaking part, you're using a variety of vocabulary. So if you see 1 or 2 of these expressions today and you like the expression, if I were in your shoes, I would. If you like that, for example, write it down, try and use it, practice it, learn it, and use it in the future. You'd better wash the dishes. Yes. The dishes are piling up in the sink. There's a mountain of dishes. So that's strong advice. You'd better wash the dishes because there are no clean dishes. Christine's asking, what do we call a person, or how do we say? Be careful, Christine. It's what do we call, or how do we say? So what do we call a person who's always giving unsolicited advice? A pain in the neck?
A meddler, a busybody. Both of your words are great. They're fine.
Yes.
And the other one is a know-it-all.
Ooh.
Would you say that?
Let me
yeah,
write
you better
that
write that. So sometimes it's to do a little bit with your personality. I have to say this is one of my weaknesses as well. I'm a bit like that.
No,
Craig,
I don't agree.
Craig would tell you that.
I don't agree.
You can be sometimes a know-it-all, and that is a person who thinks they know everything, right? It's unfortunately, I think that is one of the dangers. That's right. A sabelo todo, says Minia. That's right. Now, a know-it-all is one of the professional dangers of being a teacher. And the longer you've been a teacher, every day you go to work and your students expect you to know the answer. And when you start teaching, you think, oh, I'm not sure, but you pretend to know the answer. And then after 30 years of teaching, you believe it yourself that you know the answer to everything. And it's not true.
No,
so
nobody knows everything.
No. But unfortunately, it's a professional danger. It's there's another expression for that, isn't it? What do we say? We don't say professional
hazard.
Hazard. It's a professional hazard of a teacher that they become know-it-alls.
Yeah. We have to justify our existence by explaining things.
Exactly.
Not giving advice. It might be possible that you might be in a situation where someone's asked your advice, but you don't know what to say. You don't know what advice to give. So there are 2 or 3 expressions you can use to not give advice. Here's the first one.
So I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say. Or I'm sorry, but I don't know what to advise. Okay.
And notice that British people like to apologize about anything negative. So they say, I'm sorry, but da-da-da. I'm afraid, but da-da-da. So preempt it at the beginning with an apology and then, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say.
We say it like that if you want to be nice. If you forget to say I'm sorry or I'm afraid, then the impression that an English person gets is that you don't want to be helpful, and that you don't actually want to help this person at all. So if I ask you for advice and you say I don't know what to tell you, or I don't know what to say, or I don't know what to advise, I have the feeling that you are not sympathetic towards me. Right. So you have to say, I'm sorry, or I'm afraid, if you want to give the other person the feeling that you are trying, but you just don't know. Yeah. But if you want the other person to stop asking you, then you don't use I'm sorry or I'm afraid. Then you just say, I don't know what to tell you. And then that ends the conversation.
And there are other words you could use to soften it and make you sound a bit more sympathetic. For example, really could go in the middle. I really emphasizing, I really don't know what to tell you. I honestly don't know what to tell you. To be frank, I don't know what to tell you. To be honest, I don't know what to tell you. I wish I could suggest something, but I can't. I wish I could. Remember, after wish, you need that past tense. I wish I had, I wish I went, I wish I knew, I wish I could. So it's like in Spanish, you use the subjuntivo here, ojalá, and then subjuntivo in English with I wish, or if only, then you use a past tense. I wish I could tell you something. I wish I could suggest something, but I can't. And similarly, I wish I could help.
I wish I could help. Now, May is asking a very interesting question, Craig. Can you put that one up? So she's saying, what is the difference between, I think she means between the use of tell and the use of say? Can I use either in any context? Yeah, you can't. So it's a nasty one in English, May. I'm sorry about that, but it's like, I don't know what to tell you, or I don't know what to say, full stop. Yeah. So you always tell somebody something, right? But we say, you can not say anything after say, or you can say something, but you don't need the person. So it depends how you phrase it. But tell, you have to have the person there. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say. I hope that helps. It's quite a complex area, that one. Mm-hmm.
Christine's got an interesting question as well. What's the difference between a know-it-all and an opinionated person?
Mm-hmm.
They're quite close. I think that a know-it-all is someone who always thinks they're right and they have all the information, whereas an opinionated person has very, very strong opinions about things and will tell you about their opinion. But it's not necessarily based on information and being sure that they're right all the time. What do you think, Lynne?
I think a know-it-all doesn't necessarily have right. A know-it-all is somebody who just always has something to say about something. Yeah. So they always have maybe not a strong opinion, but they always have something to say about everything. That's a know-it-all. But an opinionated person, as you say, Craig, I agree there. An opinionated person is someone who has very strong convictions or very strong opinions, and they
express them.
Yeah, and they're not very tolerant of other opinions either. I think an opinionated person isn't very tolerant of other opinions. A know-it-all might be a tolerant person, but they just don't shut up.
we all know one. No, it's not. We all know one or two people like that. Another question from Christine: could we say, "I don't know, I've never been there"? Yeah, I would say that in that situation. For example, I've never been skiing. If someone asked me advice about where to go, like skiing, I've never been there. Not there, meaning the place, meaning in that situation. I've never been in that situation. I've never been there before. I don't know what to say to you. Yeah. Okay, where are we? I wish I could help, but I can't. There's I'm afraid again, that apology. I'm afraid I can't really help you, and really as well, making it softer. So I'm afraid I can't really help you. I don't know what to say. I've never been there.
Okay.
Oh, questions. Shall we revise before that? Shall we revise some of the expressions we've actually, I'll put them all in the chat room. I think that's the best thing to do. So all the expressions that we've just told you, I'll put in the chat, because what we'd like, if you would like to ask advice on they've come as one big lump, one big text. Sorry about that. If you would like to ask us advice about English or anything, then you can come in
and ask the know-it-all. I'll give you advice.
But before we give you any advice, we want to say that we're not lawyers, we're not psychologists, we're not psychiatrists. So there's a disclaimer. We're only English teachers. But if you want to practice, some of these expressions while we're chatting and giving and asking for advice, then come in and speak to us. I'm going to put the link to join us in the chat room. If you want to come and say hi, come and join us. There it is. And I also have a banner, I think, that I can put at the bottom of the screen. There you go. Join us live. StreamYard.com/J5E7PCC856. Type that in your browser, in your navigador, and I'll bring you in to say hello and either ask myself or ask Lynne or both of us for advice. So while we're waiting for you to come and say hi, we have got some questions.
Yeah.
Um,
I
before
think
we,
it was. Oh, go on.
I was, I'm
It
just
wasn't
looking
it.
for where was it? Was it? Oh
It
yes.
was what
What's
is the
the
best
best
piece of advice you've ever had?
ever had?
Uh-huh.
What's yours, Lynn?
Well, I have a nice piece of advice. And this piece of advice, you'll like this. It's written on my bracelet. You see this
Really?
bracelet? Look at this. And this piece of advice, though, I had long before somebody gave me this bracelet, and it's actually engraved on the bracelet. So I'll never forget it. But I knew this advice long before. Now, I asked you, Craig, I don't know if you had it, to put it in a banner,
Yes, I've
because
got
it's
it
got
here.
quite a bit of complex words. So many years ago, somebody told me this phrase, and it said, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Now, if you're not religious, I don't think you need it. It's not particularly a religious thing. If you're religious, then you can think that it's God. You want God to give you. Grant you is to give somebody. So you're asking that you have the serenity. Now, the serenity is the calmness. Yeah. So without resistance, the calmness to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. So please, can you give me the courage, the bravery to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference? Because sometimes we spend a lot of energy on trying to change things that we cannot change, and it's a wasted effort. So you need wisdom to be able to differentiate what can you change and what can you not change. And then you expend your energy accordingly. And I got that piece of advice many years ago, probably about 30 years ago. And I have to say, and then a few years ago, somebody gave me this bracelet with it on. And I think it's very, as Christine says, sound advice. Now, when Christine's just said there, sound advice, that means excellent advice, good advice, very solid. Yep. And for me personally, that is definitely the best advice I have ever had, because especially when I was younger, I tried to change many things. Because I think you have this idea that if you want something and you work hard enough for it, you can achieve it. But sometimes we don't differentiate between the things that we try to change. For example, you cannot change people. That's very important to learn, isn't it? Do you agree?
Yes, you can't change people, but
you can change people.
But you can change how you react to them.
How you react to people, exactly. And so you need to have that little bit of wisdom to know which bit you should be trying to change.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I like that advice.
It's wonderful advice. And when we were communicating during the week, Lynn and I are thinking about what we were going to do today. And I asked the question, or we asked the question of each other, our best piece of advice that we've ever heard. I was thinking of something very, very similar. It wasn't exactly this quotation, but it was the idea that, don't worry about things that you don't have control over. Mm-hmm. If you're late for an appointment and you're sitting in traffic in a taxi, there's nothing you can do about it. The car can't fly, at least not yet. So you have to wait in the car and not be stressed. But you do have control over what time you leave your house. So there's some things in life you can control and there's some things in life you can't. And it's pretty much what this is saying. Knowing the difference is really important. And just chill and relax and be cool about the stuff and the people that you can't change. So you
don't worry, be happy.
Exactly. Don't worry,
don't worry, be happy.
So then when I saw Lynn write this, I had to think of another piece of advice. And my second favorite is this: take some time to smell the roses, which means don't rush around too much or don't get too focused on a particular path in life and not enjoy the good things that life gives you. So if you're running to work, for example, because something's really important, just take time to slow down and smell the flowers on the way and enjoy the simple things in life, because sometimes the simple things are the best.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a nice phrase. It's serendipity. Because the serendipity, I don't know if people know that word, but serendipity is when things happen by chance that are very nice. And it's very interesting because it's a long time since I've heard that expression, sometime to smell the roses. And last week, I had found a podcast for one of my students, and somebody in the podcast said that expression, take some time to smell the roses. So I was just explaining that idiom last week, but I haven't heard that for years, taking time to smell the roses. But I did last week.
A good friend of mine told me that years ago, and it stuck with me. I remembered it, and it's a nice piece of advice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ezekiel said, when we were teenagers, we wanted to change the entire world. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I still want to, Ezekiel. It's just that I have more serenity now, and I'm trying to be wise to know what I can change and what I can't. But I still want to.
Here's another question while we're waiting for you to come in. Remember, if you want to join us, you can join us and say hi. The link is also at the bottom of the screen and in the chat. So don't be shy. Come and say hi. We're very friendly. We won't shout at you or anything if you come and say hello. There's another question we have here. How do you feel when someone doesn't take your advice?
You asking me?
Both of us. What do you think, Lynne?
Yeah.
What do you think in the chat? I mean, does that happen to you?
Yes, of course. And I had to think quite carefully about that this week. And I discovered that, if it's somebody that I don't care about, it doesn't matter to me if they don't take my advice. They can take it or leave it. We have that expression, take it or leave it. So I'll offer advice because I'm kind of a know-it-all and a bit of a help. I mean, I'm a know-it-all, but I am trying honestly to help people. So my motivation is to try to help people. And I just like to try to help people. Sometimes I don't wait to know if they want to be helped. So I do offer advice quite readily. But and if they don't take it, if I don't know the person very well, then it doesn't matter to me. They can take it or they can leave it. But
what if it's someone in your family or a good friend?
When it's a good friend and it's somebody I love, and if they ask me for advice and I give it and then they don't feel it, sometimes I feel a little bit rejected. If I'm honest. I'm being honest. But of course, I think, you have to, everybody has their own life to lead. And I thought about that particularly because I have children. And of course, with your children, you're always giving them advice. And now my children are older and they don't always take my advice. And I have to keep reminding myself that's because they are separate people. So it's okay that they don't take my advice. But in the initial, the initial feeling is sometimes I feel a little bit hurt.
Yeah, I read something I liked on the internet as I was searching around this week, preparing this. That was, someone said advice should be given like a present when it's asked for. So you give it, and then as a present, then you just leave it with the person to do with as they want. And I also was reminded of my sister, who sometimes asks for advice and then doesn't take it. And there's an expression I put in the chat, which is called confirmation bias, which means sometimes I think people ask for advice because they want you to confirm something they want to do. So they expect to hear one thing to confirm. And if they don't take your advice. Imagine, for example, you want to buy a new mobile phone, but your phone's working fine. Your old phone's working, but you want a new phone. So you ask someone's advice, like, what do you think I should get this phone? What do you think about the new phones? And if someone tells you, well, your phone's fine, it's working okay, you don't want to hear that because they're not confirming what you want to do.
Yes, that's true. Uh-huh.
Christine's asking, what do you normally do when you get conflicting advice? Do you trust your gut feeling or the head and the heart? What do you follow? That's interesting.
I always trust I think one thing is asking for advice, but the responsibility of making the decision is yours. It's not to do with the people who offer your advice. So if you get conflicting advice, it's your problem. You've got to decide. and it depends on the situation, whether I would go with my gut feeling, that's my instinctive feeling, or whether I go with my head. I suppose it depends on the situation. Most of the time I try to go with my gut, but sometimes it's not a good idea to go with your gut. So
it also
depends on the situation.
It depends on the situation. It also depends who the advice is coming from. If the advice is coming from somebody who I trust and I believe will give me good advice, then I'll probably take it, especially if I think that person knows more than me. They have more experience. Jose Ignacio wants to come in and say hi, so let's bring him in.
Oh, great.
Hello, Jose.
Hi, Jose.
Hi, Jose Ignacio.
Welcome.
Are
you doing? How are you doing?
Fine.
Very well.
Thank you.
Where are you calling from? Where are you?
Chile.
Where are you, Jose Ignacio?
I am a fanatic of your show.
I
am from Chile.
From Chile. Oh, great.
Chile.
From Santiago, from the capital?
From Chile. Nice. No, I am living in a city ubicated 2 hours south from Santiago. It's a small city.
Okay. Wow. Fantastic.
So, thank you very much for everything. Really, I am a fanatic of your show. The podcast, and also I am binge with your videos.
You're binge watching. You're binge watching.
Yeah, I'm a fanatic.
That's good to hear. That's one way to pass the time, Jose Ignacio. That's one way to pass time. Do you have any? Would you like to ask us for any advice on anything?
Or maybe you'd like to give us some advice.
No, I think I could receive a lot of advice from you as far as English is concerned, because I've been studying English for a couple of months, but sometimes I think the speaking, or at least my level of speaking, depends mostly of the mood that I am, for example, and I don't know how to change it. I'd like to be able to speak every day in a perfect way, and sometimes I became frustrated because of that. But I don't know if you have a piece of advice for me.
Oh, Craig.
Well, I'll go first, shall I? Okay,
you go first, Craig.
Well, the first thing I'd advise you, Jose Ignacio, is just remember that it's a process. I mean, learning any language and improving is a long process. I am still learning English because often I see words that I don't know and I have to look up and check. So you never really learn everything and you never become perfect. Native speakers also make mistakes. So don't worry and don't get stressed about that. And about speaking, when I speak Spanish, I find it very difficult when I'm tired. I can't think very well in Spanish. So maybe if you connect with a group of English speakers or you're practicing online, try to do it when you're fresh, when you're awake, when you have energy. Maybe in the morning, you're more energetic. That's a good time to practice your English. And also try to find people online to speak to about things that you enjoy doing. Because if you love sports, or if you love photography, or if you love fashion, whatever you like, you're more enthusiastic and motivated to speak in English about something you love. So try and find those communities on Facebook or on, there's a new app that I've been using called Clubhouse, which also has a lot of Spanish people in there, a lot of English people speaking. It's only audio. It's really good for practicing English. So maybe try Clubhouse and try to find a group that speaks to your hobbies and your interests. Lynn,
I have
any?
a piece of advice. Yes, you see, I've got to give advice. It's me. I'm Mrs. Know-it-all. So here's some advice for you. Now, I was thinking when Craig was talking to you, and I remembered that when I was a student, I was studying French. And one of the problems when you study a foreign language is that you don't have a lot of opportunities to speak English. So you're living in Chile, so everybody's speaking Spanish around you. So maybe you only get to speak English in your classes, or maybe only at work a little bit. And that was my situation in England with French, because we were studying French, but we never had an opportunity to speak it. And then I remember that my friend and I, she also studied French. When we used to walk to university, we shared a house together, and we used to go to classes in university. Then we made a deal that on the way walking to university, we would only speak French. Now, I'm sure that we didn't speak correctly, right? I'm sure that we didn't speak correctly.
But you were practicing.
But we were practicing, and you were getting your tongue around the words. So they weren't just in your head thinking, but they were coming out of your mouth. So you were getting pronunciation practice. And because my friend and I, we were good friends, we had lots of things we wanted to talk about. So, and these were topics that we didn't learn in our French classes. You know, we were I was younger then. We were talking about boys and parties and who said that and who wore that. And then, of course, we were pushing ourselves, actually, without realizing it, we were pushing ourselves into areas of the language without realizing, and we had a lot of fun. So maybe if you can persuade one of your close friends who speaks English, and maybe you can have, I don't know, one day a week, or if you play a sport and you play tennis, say, we're only going to play tennis in English, or something like that. If you can do that with somebody, it's very helpful.
Why are you studying English, Jose Ignacio? Why do you need to speak English? Is it a hobby, or do you need it for work?
Mostly, I mean, when I decided to start with this process of learning English, it was first because I thought that because of my degree, which I really needed to learn English. I needed to work with foreign people, for example, or I need to know how to speak that language, which is the most spoken language in the world. So basically, it was that at the beginning, but then I started to really enjoy the process of learning English. And the most I enjoy, the most I realized how easier it become, because I think that is the way you don't only have to focus in the end of on the road or the way, but the process allowed you to enjoy and to really learn. So
absolutely,
yes, at the beginning was that one, but then I realized I really like that culture. I've been listening to your podcast, Aprender Inglés con Reza and Craig, every day. So
Thank you.
also I listen to these videos, these lives. So yeah, that is the reason now.
Wonderful. Well, you're speaking really well, Jose Ignacio. We understand everything you say, so well done. And
well
just
done.
look for those groups online. There are lots of groups in Facebook that are starting up and looking for people to join and have a conversation chat. So try and find those people who want to practice, and you'll make some friends and practice your English when you find those people online.
Absolutely.
Thanks for saying hello. It's really good to see you.
Lovely to see you. Thank you. Good luck.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
You too.
Chile, Santiago. No, not Santiago de Chile. It was not Santiago.
No, he was 2 hours south of Chile.
2 hours south. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that was.
If anybody else wants to come in, you're very welcome to say hi. Again, there's the link. It's also on the bottom of the screen. We have about 5 minutes left, so come in and say hello. What advice would you give?
I was just about to say,
is that the question
are you going to
ask
ask that question? Are you
yes,
going to ask
because
that
I'd like to know what you would say to yourself, or maybe advice you've given your daughters. Because
that's not the same. The advice I give to my daughters is not the advice I give to me.
the wisdom of your years. What
What
if you could
advice
go
would you give
back?
your
What would you say
18-year-old
to
self?
yourself?
Well, I thought about that, and
You've had a very full and interesting life
Yeah,
so far.
I
You've done
have.
so many things. You've traveled, you've lived in other countries,
Mm.
you've learned languages, and
Yeah, I think maybe just to, I think when I look back now, I think maybe when I was 18, I think when you're young, it's normal though, but you have quite a few hang-ups. Hang-ups. Do you know that word, everybody? Hang-ups.
I'll put it in
Little,
the chat.
sort of like little things that make you feel insecure, you know? And especially teenage girls, and nowadays the same. And when I was a teenage girl, the same. You were very concerned with how you looked. You were very conscious all the time about whether your hair was in place and things like that.
And
And I look back now and I think, oh, I spent a lot of energy on that, and it really wasn't necessary. So I maybe just to, you know, take life more graciously, maybe. Don't get so stressed about little things.
Yeah.
But that's I think that's just life. As you get older, you get wiser, and you get more chilled and more laid back. I've definitely, in my experience, I've become more laid back with age. I was very intense as a teenager. I'm still intense now, but I was even more intense then.
Yeah,
What about you, Craig?
You kind of learn when you get older that not many things matter, really. Not many things are very important, and the things that most things don't matter at all, and some things matter a little bit. But my advice for me would probably be, Craig, get out of the pub, stop drinking beer, and go and study something to do with video or audio, because I realized late in life that I really love doing this kind of thing. So now I'm trying to learn, which is also nice, to find something late in life and learn and study something. But I wish I had maybe gone to university and studied a different thing and studied about production and audio and video, and that would have given me a career in something that I really enjoy doing now. But you don't know that until you discover it. So it's, you know, a bit silly. Christine's got a question. Do you share the idea that the best advice is found on the pillow?
Never, Christine. Never. No, that
the worst advice
for the people who maybe, because if you're a lower level of English speaker, maybe you don't understand that. The advice found on the pillow is it's a metaphor, well, an idiom really, and it's the advice that you find in bed when
usually
you are
after sex.
Usually after sex, or but when you're in bed with somebody in a very intimate way. And then, of course, maybe you share advice with each other. And is the best advice found on the pillow? My answer would be absolutely not. What about you, Craig?
No, but then again, in that situation, that's when the expression "your guard is down." That's when you're very vulnerable. That's when you're very open. After you've had sex, you're completely relaxed, and there's this intimacy, this exchange of ideas that maybe doesn't happen in other situations. So communication can be very, very easy in that situation. But advice, probably you'd need to be dressed and thinking with your head more than your heart.
And apart from that, Christine, I don't want advice on what phone to buy in bed. Depends what they're advising you about. But if they're advising me about what phone to buy, or what's the best computer, or how should I lose weight, those are not topics for the bedroom.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have to stop. We're out of time, unfortunately. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you very much for being with us and keeping us company and sharing your advice and your suggestions.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's been a lot of fun. I'll be back next week with Monica. Hopefully Lynne will be back with me 2 weeks from now. So please join us again. As usual, we'll put the information on the Mansion Ingles Facebook page and also on Twitter. But before we go, Lynne, could you say again where people can find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Sure. So that's my website, putitlikethis.com. And I'm an online teacher, and I only teach online, and I make specific courses for different needs of students. So I'm not offering standard courses, but courses that are tailor-made to specific objectives. But if you go to my website, you can find more information there if you're interested.
Putitlikethis.com is the place to go. And my name's Craig. I'm from the mencioningles.com website, La Mención del Inglés, where you can find free courses and lots of material to help you improve your English. And as Jose Ignacio said earlier when he called in from Chile, you can also listen to inglespodcast.com. The podcast is called Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig, two teachers with lots and lots of experience helping you every week with your English. So thanks again for being here. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you again soon. Just take care and stay safe.
Yes. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.